Hello, Swivel Heads. This is Greg Allison with Green Greg's coming to you tonight for some interesting news about Russia having their missile frigate, the Admiral Gorshkov, off the U.S. coast as we speak. And given the tempo of everything going on, including having their intelligence ships right off the coast of Hawaii and having put missile launchers for missile defense systems on top of buildings in Moscow, about to roll into Ukraine with another invasive force. Things are really up right now. The tensions are high. My friend Lee Wheelbarger has really been showcasing this morning and talking about this and the threats. And so we're doing a joint show, and I'm about to join in and include his audio here in just a second. I'm going to unmute so you can hear his channel. I may have to mute it, just have him speak directly through here. We'll see how this works. So another invasive force. Oh, I better mute because that's me talking. So I'll let Lee run the microphone through from his channel through, hopefully, the Zoom link. Lee, hope you can do that, and hopefully we can carry this together. He's sharing his screens. I will share some stuff here in a little bit too. I've got some things I got to show y'all about these missile systems. So let's launch it. Lee, what do you say? Run the microphone.
So we'll try that again here. I'm trying.
And you can hear me okay, Greg?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. All right. So what we have is,
hang on, stuff here in a little bit too. I've got some stuff. I got to mute your video from your channel. Hang on a second. So let's launch it. Lee, what do you say?
All right. Well, first off, I want to make sure that you can hear me. So you can hear me or not?
Yeah, I can hear you. I think I just muted the channel. Can I say anything?
All right. We'll try it again. Test 1, 2.
No, it's good. It's good. It's good right now. That's where we need to be.
Okay.
Good. We're good.
All right. So, folks, what we're tracking here is the very first Russian ship that it's a like a cruiser destroyer type of vessel, and it is equipped with hypersonic nuclear tipped missiles. And when we talk about hypersonic, we're talking at least 5 times faster than the speed of sound. Now, I've told people many, many times, I don't have any way to prove that Russia has a hypersonic missile that they can launch from sea level or from ground bases. We do know that they can take other missiles up to altitude underneath their high performance fighter jets, drop those and fire them off. And because the air is thinner up there, those missiles can reach hypersonic speeds. We know that they can make nuclear warheads. So that's not anything new. Now, we do have video of this footage of this vessel. We do have information about it. In addition to that, there is also a Russian intelligence vessel that is just off of the Hawaiian coast. And we can show you that. In fact, I will put that up on the screen for you right now so you can see just how close this Russian ship is to Hawaii. This is the big island right here of Hawaii. And if we measure from the vessel to the shore, it's just 25 miles off the coast of Hawaii. Now, our government doesn't really want to talk about this, and they didn't mention it until just a few days ago. We've known this ship has been there for over, I guess, 2 weeks now, close to 3 weeks. It's been operating in and around the area. We've also been tracking off of the East Coast here, and let me go over to this other map for you here. We've been tracking here off of the East Coast, this Russian vessel, and which is the one with the nuclear warheads and hypersonic missiles. That vessel has traveled all the way down through the Atlantic and came down along the eastern coast of the United States. We're estimating that it's close to about 100 miles or so off of the coast, maybe a little farther. And there have been RC-135s, P-8s, and a variety of other aircraft that has been operating off of the east coast of the United States. These are U.S. aircraft. We've been tracking those aircraft and had the idea that this vessel was out there, but now it's pretty much confirmed indeed that that vessel is there. The U.S. is paying attention to it, and we are seeing more and more aircraft going out and having a look-see at what is going on off of the east coast of the United States. And the reason I wanted to have Green Greg's on here was because Greg Allison is part of an EMP commission. I was part of the Texas EMP commission. That's electromagnetic pulse, in an attempt to harden the grid in the state of Texas. And I've supported the Air Force, I've supported the U.S. Army, I've supported government entities to have, how should we say, uninterrupted power supplies that are also EMP and CME proof. So I wanted to talk to Greg here so as that you folks could hear what Greg has to say, see what Greg has to say, let Greg talk about hypersonic missiles, how fast they are, how it doesn't take long to get a nuclear warhead to altitude, and what type of devastating effect that would have. So, Greg, if you would, you want to tell our people all about nuclear warheads and the threat that these are posing, especially in a hypersonic missile, because as you know as well as I do, it only takes 40 seconds from the time that a missile is launched off the coast of the U.S. to get to altitude and detonate and take out probably about a third, if not half, of our grid, dependent upon the yield of that missile. So take it away, Greg. Tell everybody what they need to know.
Well, if you launch it from a higher altitude, you can take out most of the grid. In fact, all of our grid. If you launch it from, if you detonate it in orbit, that is, you don't even have to make it go down. Just flying over, it goes boom, everything goes out. So I can show all that. I was going to step through these missile systems and kind of walk my way into the EMP story, although I could start on EMP. Hang on a second. Let me find the chart I want to show you first for that. Give me a moment. I got a lot of tabs open here in my various things here. Let's see. There we go. I'm going to do a share screen. Give me a second. And here we go. Bing. That is it right there. This gives you an idea of at altitude what would happen. This inner circle here is the altitude that you can typically get from a balloon at 30 kilometers, which is a little less than 20 miles. Now, I'll mind you, I have flown balloon payloads to about 22, 23 miles in height myself. And so this is totally achievable. Some of you may know I have launched rockets from balloons from the East Coast and out of the Gulf of Mexico. So this is something I've done on a few occasions. And so I've got experience in launching balloons, launching rockets and balloons, and operating them from ships. I've done all of that. And these are all the kind of operations I would worry about for somebody sneaking a launch at us from our soft underbelly down here in the Gulf of Mexico or Caribbean, from which we're not really monitoring with radar, like our radar line in the north. It used to be known as the DEW line. It's got a new name now, but everybody still remembers the name DEW line. These various circles here show how far you would reach with an EMP from various altitudes. The outer circle is about 240 miles, which is typical of a low Earth orbit satellite, the space station, or something like that. If you see, Churchill is up there where the polar bears are crawling around, and Mexico City, that's the halls of Montezuma. So that's quite a reach. If it was detonated over Omaha, it would get almost the entirety of the United States, and Maine might be out of, and Quebec might escape this one if targeted here. The thought is that they would actually probably target a number of devices to set this off, and it would probably actually launch the attack with direct kinetic attacks on the ground, like the ones going after our power grid stations, except they would get serious. Instead of going for the cooling fins, they would go straight for the transformer buckets and try to deplete the oil fast so you couldn't get to them quick enough to repair them, unlike the strikes we've had so far. So there would be strikes in earnest to really do serious damage. And you would probably also see attacks. Well, there would be cyber attacks. The cyber attacks might hit first, because part of their goal is to take down not only our power grid, but our ability to respond. I've always get people go, well, if they hit us, we're going to hit them with our nuke submarines. No, we're not, because our nuke submarines, as you know, they require a validated EAM. So we got to really send them through message over the network. and our networks are typically hardened to 50,000 volts per meter. That was our mill standard for hardening in the past. Or maybe they've upped that a little bit. The Soviet era weapons are capable of putting out 200,000 volts per meter, at least in the center of the area where they're, and it's going to be like it's going to be shaped different than this. This just shows you the reach.
And the issue there, Greg, is our spec is only for 100,000.
Well, actually, it's 50 now. They might have upped it, but last I saw,
for critical infrastructure, it's 100 now.
Yeah, well, but the 200,000 is the capability that the Russians have. The Russians admitted they gave that technology to the Koreans, North Korea, and China's got it too, just by, they have the EMP super weapon. So those actually aren't your strongest super weapons. Now, this is the idea of what you would see in a nuclear world war, an EMP world war. And these indicate smaller strikes. These are probably actually from high altitude, or actually airburst nukes would have quite a range of coverage from just the mushroom cloud. This is probably Fort Greely right here getting hit, my old base in Alaska. That is Brussels. This is Israel, probably Tel Aviv. That's Tokyo, and this would be our guys in Guam getting hit. Which would also, if the height was proper, would take out, as you can see, Taiwan. So, Chinese would love that. Well, let's hit Guam and we'll nuke Taiwan in a twofer. So these are the kind of things you would expect to see from an EMP attack. The gray areas are all the grids that would crash from the cascading effects of grids going down, just like New York when a power line, when a power line in Ohio a few years ago had a tree branch hit it and it took out the whole Northeast. Some of you might recall that. So these are the kind of things we're looking at, except a lot of those kind of attacks on the grid were readily repairable. The problem is if you fry these big, heavy transformers, this is what we worry about. They are not replaceable. It used to be that you could get them on your loading dock in 18 months after ordering one, but now the lead times are much longer. And that's just for replacement or new build rates. And that's also considering the infrastructure exists to order them, to build them, and to ship them. Which
3 years was the last number I heard to get a big one.
None of that's going to be happening if all the grids go down worldwide, or if you get even if all of the United States is attacked, and suddenly we have still the capacity, the bank accounts, and everything to order and receive and put these things in. How long would it take when you lost thousands and thousands of thousands? It would be years. It would take 15 years if everything was working right to replace them all. But the problem is that 9 out of 10 people would be deaf and societal collapse within a year. And, we have labor shortages bad enough as it is. We can't almost seem to get anything done now with just the labor shortages we have. Imagine where you'd be if 9/10 of your people were wiped out and the other 10% are struggling to eke a living. And that's not even counting the effects. That estimate was not counting for the effects of what would come out of the spent fuel rod pools of the nuclear power plants. I pick on those rather than the reactors, because everybody's scared of the reactors. So I'll just talk about the spent fuel rod pools, because they would overheat. They're outside a containment building. They evaporate 160 gallons of water per minute, and you have to have a long-term energy source to keep pumping water to them. The diesel fuel would run out and you wouldn't be able to replenish it because pumps won't work because they need electric power, and the trucks won't be able to roll to bring them if they did work. So you got tons of things that would be collapsed. An entire supply chain would totally unravel. So let me go back here and we'll talk some of these missile systems here. Oh yeah, by the way, I did cover this a couple of weeks ago, talking about the prospects for this in one of these videos here somewhere. Yeah, right there. And I talked about this about 3 years ago when Russia announced these missiles they were developing. So just to take it forward, everybody knows they've got certain missiles they've been using in Ukraine, like this Kinzhal, which these are just glide hypersonics. These are not missiles that would be hypersonic on their own right if they weren't given an initial boost. In this case, it's a MiG aircraft launching a missile. And this missile is really just an Iskander missile re-outfitted to be launched from an aircraft. If it was launched from the ground, it will not go hypersonic. Now, but the interesting thing about any hypersonic system is they form a plasma sheath around the missile, so you lose external guidance, navigation, and communications through RF means. So it's just like a space shuttle coming back in, or a space capsule that goes into blackout. So you've got to have inertia guidance systems and other things. You're not going to be using satellite guidance at that point. And so it's got to be pretty much on its own. This is the Iskander missile, which was the basis. This is a ground launch theater short-range ballistic missile that has been hitting Ukraine from Russian forces. And this is their air-launched version of it, which goes hypersonic because it gets a boost. Another boost glide vehicle is the Admagorsk, and this one is to be launched on ballistic missiles like the Sarmat eventually. So this is one that would come in at us, but it's also a glide hypersonic. As you mentioned in your earlier video today, everything coming in from an ICBM is already hypersonic, and that's true. This one just has some glide directional capabilities built on to fin controls and so forth. So now where you start getting interested is the idea of really coming up with a true hypersonic missile. Oh, by the way, this is the frigate, the Admiral Gorshkov. This is the one that you're talking about.
And Greg, before you get into the frigate,
yeah,
the two things. The last time that Putin fired one of those Iskander missiles from underneath the belly of one of their fighter jets, we did an analysis of the impact of that missile, where the Russians claimed that from 1,000 miles away or wherever it was that they fired it from, that they were able to hit this target. In our analysis of that video, we found a couple of things. First off, the missile did not follow the regular glide path of what a hypersonic missile would be. It came in almost vertically, and hypersonic missiles don't come in vertically. They come in at some angle. Additionally, because we were able to catch multiple frames of the missile coming in, well, that immediately told us that it wasn't traveling at hypersonic speed, because a missile traveling at hypersonic speed, there's only 30 frames per second. So for a missile to be in multiple frames means it's not moving at hypersonic speed. So we calculated the length of the missile. Then we calculated how many frames was in the video that we had. And then we calculated the distance that it traveled. And we came up with, at the time of impact of that so-called hypersonic missile, it was only traveling 854 miles an hour. So just a little bit above Mach 1, not even hypersonic, not even basically a fifth of the way there. Also, that little bit of noise you're hearing in the background there, that is our live feed from EAMs from the U.S. military's nuclear forces. Greg spoke momentarily about EAMs, emergency action messages that are put out, and we're monitoring those in the background. So that little bit of squelch breaking there and that noise in the background is actually one of those frequencies. And in the event that there is an announcement, we're going to pause for that, because we've got a lot of people who like to hear what's going on. And then most importantly, folks, this is information that everyone needs to know. So we encourage you to share this out on your social media, send it to your friends, send it to your family, send it to your relatives, send it to people that you care about, because this is not a good thing by any stretch of the imagination. And we're going to have to get this information out there, because people need to know what's going on. People need to have prepared as best they can in whatever ways that they can. We are, at this moment in time, in my professional opinion, I think we are as close, if not closer, to a nuclear conflict than we were during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Because right now, folks, we have hypersonic nuclear missiles floating off of the east coast of the United States. And that is, to me, very, very concerning, not to mention the fact that we also have a Russian surveillance vessel just 24 miles off of the west coast of the Big Island. And for our followers that we have, our members who are out in Hawaii, we encourage you to go up on the west side of the Big Mountain or the Big Island, go up on the west side, get at least 400 feet above sea level. I would prefer, 800 to 1,000. You'll get a better view. Take yourself a telescope or some really good binoculars and look out there. And I'm going to tell you what, folks, you're going to see this Russian vessel because it's only 24 miles off the coast. And with the curvature of the earth, if you get up to about 1,000 feet, you'll easily be able to see it. In fact, you'll be able to see it in the water from 1,000 feet, most of the way down to the water line. So I'll let you, by the way, you can follow KLW World News on Twitter at News KLW. So we encourage you all to do that. Also, if you're not a member of the KLW World News Network, you can go to klwworldnews.com, sign up there VIP or above, and get access to our private news network with over 630 channels of news, text, talk, chat, and information that you can't get anywhere else. So also, Greg, if you would do a shout out for your channel so people know where to find you. And then I'm going to let you go with this frigging frigate, which is what I have nicknamed this frigging frigate, with these hypersonic nuclear missiles on board, the first of its kind. And while you're doing that, my lovely wife has delivered dinner to me here at the studio. So I'm going to mute myself and chow down while you educate these people on the dangers of this friggin' frigate and of nuclear warheads. So take it away, Greg.
Wow, tell her to pass something through the microphone.
I'll do that. I'll teleport it over there to you.
That sounds great. Well, thank you, Lee, for that takeoff there. I wanted people to know where this was. People were in my chat asking about that. To join my channel, you go to Green Greg's. So I am on the channel Green Greg's on YouTube, and Swivelhead News on YouTube, and Swivelhead News on Rumble. And maybe some of my mods can add that in some of these chat rooms, or some of the mods in your chat room should add it there. So hopefully.
Yeah, and folks, as soon as we're done talking, Greg and I are going to take questions. So please hold your questions. If you got a question, write it down so you don't forget it. And then when Greg is done with this and I'm done with this, we're going to both take questions on both channels simultaneously. So we'll take one from Greg's channel, one from our channel, so is that everybody can get their questions answered, because I know there's a lot of questions out there. I've received a bunch of phone calls and text messages already today about this. I called one of my colonel buddies, asked him if he knew anything about it. And he said, Lee, we listen to you for our news. You give us better intel than what we get from our guys. So you tell us what's going on. So there's a lot of people listening. There's 12, almost 1,300 people here on my channel watching this now, plus all of the folks on the KLW World News Network, plus all the folks on Greg's channel. So there's well over 2,000 people watching this now. Share this out so everybody can get it. Okay, very good. So this Admiral Gorshkov, I actually test fired this so-called missile that we're talking about, the Zircon. It's also now carrying it. This thing has circumnavigated the world before. The thing about a frigate is they're very maneuverable. They're a lot faster than a lot of other submarines, a lot of other bigger battleships. So the fact that they can carry nuclear missiles on a frigate is scary in and of itself. This thing is capable of carrying 16 of these missiles. These missiles are capable of sporting warheads that are 200 kilotons. That's 13 1/3 times more powerful than the little boy, which we dropped on Hiroshima the 6th of August, 1945. So this is a very powerful weapon. It's capable of moving fast, even if it's not hypersonic. I'm not surprised at all about the Kinzhal, because for one thing, it is difficult to monitor and track a missile that's actually going hypersonic. To have any remote control over it, it's impossible. It's got to be on its own when it's hypersonic, because it has that plasma sheath around it. And it's only going to travel as fast as the launch platform plus its boost rocket takes it when it's in glide phase. So if that is not hypersonic, well, that's just what it is. Now, this Zircon missile allegedly has a scramjet engine in it, which, if it works properly, should be capable of going super. Scramjet should be able to take you to hypersonic velocities, like up to Mach 9. That's what they claim. We shall see in time what all that is, or hopefully we don't see. It'd be better off if we never see or hear anything from it again. But this Admiral Gorshkov, there's a whole Gorshkov fleet of these frigates. So they've got other ships they can deploy like this. This is their flagship of that class of vehicle, the Gorshkov class.
So as you can see here, they talk about a Gorshkov class here, but this is the Admiral Gorshkov ship itself that is off our coast as we speak. According to Lee, it's 24 miles off our coast, which is very close. International waters are only 12 miles out.
Wait, let me correct you there. The surveillance vessel is 24 miles off the coast of Hawaii to the west. This vessel is about 150 to 200 miles off the east coast, parallel with South Carolina, Georgia.
That is very close. It's still very, very close.
Oh, yeah. With a hypersonic missile, who cares about 100 miles?
No, that's nothing. It's nothing at all. I'll show you some reach photographs toward the end here, or depictions that shows you using the slower caliber missiles, how far they could be reached from 1,200 miles out. So they've got quite a range inland to America, even at 1,200 miles out, even with the caliber missile, which this thing could be carrying instead of the Zircon. If for some reason the Zircon missile was not functional and they're bluffing us, the caliber missile is a sufficient threat to be worried about, especially if it were that close. So, irregardless of what they claim or don't claim, this ship is a serious thing to be off our coast at any distance. So we're going to go through all that. So hang on a minute. I got to make my screen smaller because my Zoom is fighting me. Let's see here. Here is a picture of a Zircon missile. Now, the Zircon missile, or at least that's what they tell us the Zircon missile looks like. If it looks like this, then it would be definitely a candidate for a hypersonic missile, because this big air scoop at the bottom would be what it would use to breathe air. The characteristic of a scramjet engine, what they show us here, the scramjet engine, is that is a supersonic combustion ramjet. The engine detonation, the burning combustion of the engine itself, is outside the engine. It's behind the engine, not in the engine like in a typical jet. That's why it's called supersonic combustion ramjet. It has the property of ramming air like a ramjet, but it's going so fast it would flame out inside the engine itself. So they have to design it where it could actually burn outside the engine behind the craft and push it that way in a rocket sort of way. And usually the aft fuselage is part of the nozzle. They might have something like a aerospike nozzle, which is a little bit beyond the scope of discussion now, but I don't know exactly what their nozzle fuselage or aft end shape looks like here, because this is hidden by the booster rocket. They got a rocket engine to start this thing off. To get it up to the initial operating velocity is kicked up by a booster rocket. And then what gives the scramjet engine the power is that it doesn't have to carry all of its own fuel. This oxygen is the heaviest part of the fuel. So if it can breathe oxygen from the atmosphere, it gives a lot more potential velocity and range. It makes the weapon system a lot more lethal in terms of reach and capability and velocity. So those are all, that's hard technology to develop, by the way. This is a system that takes a lot of development, a lot of sophistication to develop. So it's not trivial. We are just mastering ourselves. We could have done it way earlier, but our people wanted to drag foot about developing this kind of technology. We should have been on top of it. You know, the National Aerospace Plan that Ronald Reagan wanted would have been based on this kind of technology, but we just weren't ready for that at that time. And that's just too bad. But in any event, let's kind of move on here. This is some data on the Zircon. This is straight out of, I can show you a lot of this stuff out of Facebook. You can come, not Facebook, Wikipedia, not fake book. And this gives you, tells you the engine's a scramjet, tells you, that's pretty good. Let me show you a diagram of the scramjet. So there you go. This shows that the exhaust is actually way back here, burning outside the nozzle. Combustion, the combustion's actually further back. This is not exactly right, but this is more looking like a ramjet photograph here, but very, very similar, except the combustion takes place past the nozzle, or at least the engine itself. So the nozzle has to be extended in order to have surface for the plume to push about against to give you the reaction to push you forward. So enough for that. So let's go back, scramjet. So that's the cool thing, at least about Wikipedia, is you can go through a lot of different things here. Shows operational range of this missile being, like it says, over 1,000 kilometers, 540 miles. It's probably further than that because the caliber has a better range than that. So this is also shows you that they can contemplate going Mach 9 or 6,900 miles per hour. It's 6,900 miles per hour. This thing would cover 100 miles in less than a minute, or 575 miles in 1 minute. if this thing is capable of reaching that velocity. This is what it's projected at. I guess this is based on the claims from Russia. As Lee said, we have not validated these, but they did do a test launch of this thing out over the ocean, and we can look at this here. This is, as my understanding, is the test launch video for this missile. It should be from the Admiral Gorshkov itself. Now you get another view here in a minute of it from the ship at a distance, not great distance. You can't tell a lot from these photographs. The booster rocket is firing there. All you see is the booster rocket firing. You don't see the actual Zircon missile itself in operation. All you saw was the booster rocket firing. So what happened from there, I don't know. That's a hypersonic. That looks different there. So there's different videos on here, different stuff. This is a Russian channel, obviously, on YouTube, for whatever that is or is not work, brought to us by our American, supposedly American Popular Mechanics magazine. So anyway, like I said, this Zircon missile is capable of carrying a warhead that's 200 kilotons, which is 13 and a third times more powerful than the little boy atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima on the 6th of August 1945. And this destroyed a city, killed like, you know, what, 100,000 or some odd people. A lot of people died as a result of this device. Of course, those cities in Japan back in the day were mostly paper buildings, but it still did horrendous damage. A bomb like that would do horrendous damage today. And something that's as powerful as the ones they're carrying today is more than we want to think about. Now, this is a missile that's an alternative that could be carried and would be quite a threat in and of itself. It's well developed for some time. This is a 3M-54 caliber missile. The Admiral Gorshkov is capable of carrying 16 of these, just like it's capable of supposedly carrying 16 Zircon missiles. This missile is also nuclear capable. It's not as fast. This missile has a range of Mach 3, which is 3,578 kilometers per hour, or 2,146.8 miles per hour. So in a minute, it would go 35.78 miles. So if it were, 100 miles off coast in the course of 3 minutes, it would be on you if you're on the coast. It could hit the White House or the Pentagon in 3 minutes flat if it were off the coast, same distance off the coast of Washington, D.C. Where it's at right now, there's a lot of bases there in South Carolina. There's naval base, there's Marine base, there's a Fort Jackson Army base where I trained, did my basic and AIT when I was in the Army. They're all there within range of it today, right now, within 3 minutes if it's a caliber missile, or less than a minute if it were a Zircon missile. So, but in any way, these things can still make incredible range. I'm going to show y'all in a minute. But the caliber missile is nothing to laugh at. This is a serious missile. If it were off your coast at that distance, you should be concerned about it as well. To give you an example, this is what the caliber missile can reach. This is if it's launched 1,200 miles off coast. Because it's got a range like a 2,500, I believe. So, guys, this is it. This thing could, even if launched way out here, could reach all this area inside the United States. A whole lot of so if it's way up,
and we're talking about right here.
Yeah,
is where the ship is.
Right, we're talking about the edge of the line, but you're telling me this right
it's here.
Yeah, I guess it's yellow line. So its range inside the United States would be way up in the Midwest, Texas. You're in range. If it's out here off South Carolina, you're in Texas, you're well within range. This thing could hit Arizona, maybe even California. Maybe not California, but it would have quite a range if just off the coast of South Carolina with a caliber missile. With a caliber missile, even if they're lying, just ball-faced lying to us about the Zircon, the caliber missile is a very sufficient threat. That's why I wanted to show this to everyone here. The caliber missile is something to be concerned with. The Zircon missile would be far worse just because you wouldn't even know it's coming. You would have no clue. And you probably even wouldn't with the caliber. It would be on you faster than you'd realize. The Zircon is just insane at how fast it goes. But they're talking, like I said, the Zircon missile is intended to carry 200 kiloton warheads. The caliber could do the same. The caliber's got a good payload capacity on it. So there is nothing about this to be There's nothing here that we should be feeling good about. Oh yeah, by the way, might be a good time to get your garden ready. I just got my Ring Greg's worm site website fixed. I was having issues with it, guys. So hey, you won't have to go to the store if you got worms, guys. You can do everything you need to do from your worms. Grant McIntosh can tell you, he's in my chat room on my channel. But you won't have to buy fertilizer because you need to recycle your kitchen waste. And in terms of pesticides, just throw a pest repellent with worm tea. Anyway, back over here to the Sarmont missile. That's springgregs.com. Lee, one of the things I worry about is this. Why has Russia invested so much money in this RS-28 Sarmont missile? Why have they invested so much into these missiles? You know, they got the SS-18 and the Sarmont are both liquid fuel boosters. They're big liquid fuel boosters. A liquid fuel booster takes a while to fuel. They're practically useless as a weapon unless they're used in a first strike. Because if you're shooting at them, because they're liquid fuel, one, you know where they're at. They're in a silo. You know exactly where they're located if you're the opposition side. So this first thing you're going to do is target you're going to target these the RS-28. You're going to target the SS-18, excuse me. So you're going to target both of these missiles first and foremost if you're trying to fire at Russia. So they're top on the target list. These are the top missiles that would be targeted. And being liquid fueled, they're more sensitive to being struck. And if their silo is struck before they're launched, they're going to have a hard time launching because their fueling systems are probably compromised and won't be able to fuel the rocket and launch it. They're only useful as a first strike weapon, to be honest, especially since it takes time to fuel them. You're not going to do a sneak attack. Well, you're not going to have hard to be able to respond. If you see missiles coming at you, don't have time to fuel this thing up. It's lost. So the fact that Russia has spent so much money developing the Satan II missile, this last one especially, is scary to me. I cannot understand why anybody would develop a missile like that does not want to launch a first strike. It makes no sense to have that.
They're portable.
Well, those are liquid fuel. They're silo launch.
Well, no, but some of these missiles, like you see right here on the side,
some of those others are portable. You have, hang on, let me go back to that chart. Yeah, these down here, they're Yars missiles and so forth. These guys here, you see these on the back of trucks.
Right, but Russia likes those.
Yeah,
because they're cheaper to maintain than a siloed missile.
Yeah, all these missiles here, these four classes right here, every one of those are their truck-mounted ICBMs. And they're solids, like our MX missile, our Minuteman missile, excuse me. They're solid rockets, and you don't have to fuel them up. They're ready to go. And that's the kind of missile you would expect people to be using if they're not planning it to do a first strike. We used to do liquid fuel ICBMs, but we did away with them. That reason, because they're not good unless you're planning to launch a first strike.
Right, and this goes back to the Russian system of their safety system and how the Russian nuclear program differs from that of the U.S. In Russia, you just can't go push a button and fire a missile. Their system has to detect a threat to the country. There has to be imminent danger and some damage to the country before they're even able to fire. So it's not an instantaneous thing. And their thought on this is that their silos and so on and so forth could survive a first strike. The issue is to maintain a nuclear silo and a nuclear missile in it is extremely expensive. And so you're better off to have missiles on trucks and then to just have these missiles like you're talking about that they can put the fuel in as opposed to having a solid rocket booster in there or solid fuel. So there's several different reasons that they like the liquid. And there's a lot of reasons why they like the mobile. Now, the Russians seem to think that those mobile launchers, they can just move those around and we'll never be able to tell where they are. Well, there's a problem with that. The trucks are so large that they require special roads. So It doesn't matter where they take that missile launcher, it's going to be along one of those roads because they're not a big off-road vehicle that you can take a lot of places off-road because they're so huge. Imagine moving part of a bridge span around in the woods and having wheels the entire length of it and not being able to be on terrain that's so uneven that a lot of the wheels come off the ground. So there's a lot of reasons that they like the liquid and a lot of reasons that they like the mobile. All right, back to you, Greg.
Okay. So, yeah, but Russians have a thing called the dead hand switch. You know, we have to, like I say, have a EAM and a validation EM for we can launch. They've got a system that will launch if they detect that there's something's happening in the country and they lose signal to Moscow. Everything launches. It's called a dead hand switch. It's like the system in Dr. Strangelove. Crazy thing is, in the movie Dr. Strangelove himself, you know, was challenging the Russian systems. The Russian guy there who was with them at the war room when they were on the verge of launch, says, well, what good is a system like that if you don't announce it ahead of time? It's for blackmail, you know. And yet they had one and didn't announce it ahead of time. And I thought it was interesting that the video of that movie, that very clip, was shown by Oliver Stone to Vladimir Putin, believe it or not. So that's just highly weird, really weird. In any event, let's look at some of this stuff. Here are where the Russian missile forces are located. This is where their ICBM bases are. And a lot of these are bases for road mobile systems, and a lot of times they're in their buildings where they're doing maintenance on them, or you know, the sheds, the barns where they keep them, or then they put them out on the road. But as Lee said, yeah, that they are heavy. You're definitely not going to be rolling them across a dirt road somewhere. Not those big trucks. They are heavy. They're huge. So yeah, you got to have special roads for that. But then again, so there is some ability to monitor that, but it is going to be, you know, something of a challenge. So, and this is what I was showing y'all earlier, the wipeout maps for EMP attacks on Israel, Guam, Japan. That's Brussels, taking out all of Europe. This is the United States and Alaska. That's my old base, Fort Greely. Unfortunately, I hope it never gets hit. And this is again how far the EMP would reach is a function of altitude of the detonation. And I have launched from this altitude and gone much higher up to these altitudes myself 20 years ago. This is what I was doing on a shoestring budget with a handful of guys working out of a garage here in Huntsville, Alabama 20 years ago, guys. So tell me that somebody can't do it, take a break, because I know better. Done it, been there, done that, and for next to nothing. This is some more stuff on the Satan missile. That's the basic Satan. That's the original one. And here is a submarine launch missile, the Bulava, which is an ICBM from SLBM from submarines. This is a list of all the nuclear weapons in inventory within the United States, or the Soviet Union, Russia, nukes, United Kingdom, France, China, India, Israel, Pakistan, North Korea. The list of North Korea. This list is not complete, but it's a pretty good start on this kind of stuff's out there available, guys. Oh yeah, here's another missile that it could be carrying on the Gorshkov. This is a ramjet engine, not a scramjet, but a ramjet engine. It's also an air breather. The P800 Onyx. Oh, I want to call it Oinks myself. Oinks.
Now, Greg, would you please explain the difference between a ramjet and a scramjet and the velocities of those and how the combustion chamber differences?
Yeah, let's see. There might be a diagram in here. I did show you a diagram earlier. What's supposed to have been a ramjet diagram, but a little more like a scramjet.
I'll agree. I thought it was more of a scramjet than a ramjet.
Yeah. I think that diagram was off a little bit. But what do you expect from journalists? So what happens is a jet engine, has an air pass through and it burns combustive air inside the jet. And most jet engines have turbofans to compress the air to make them better for combustion. Like in a piston, you have to compress air before you light it. Well, in a jet engine, typically you use a turbofans to compress the air to get enough pressure, basically squeezing the air and fuel together enough so you can ignite it. Also provides a lot of the heat which you need, you've got a triangle of fire everybody knows about called heat, fuel, and air. It's actually a square. The other corner is pressure. And if you try to light a fire in vacuum, you're going to discover real fast that you can't light one in a vacuum. And when you have, we've tried to light and solid rocket fuel samples and from balloon flights up on a vacuum, and it didn't do worth it. It didn't do diddle. So we've discovered we had to compress everything, had to have it under pressure, and then we got ignition. That was some of the earlier balloon flights we were doing years and years ago. Before we started launching rockets, we were flying test sets for various things. We were developing subsystems. Then we understood why aviation rockets have their nozzles plugged. It's not to keep debris out; it's to let the pressure build up so that it not further. A lot of people don't know that. But anyway, so the like I said, a regular jet engine has to compress the air. A scramjet, a ramjet like this one actually uses the velocity of the jet engine itself to compress the air inside the engine. This one has a rocket motor, which gets it up to the velocity for the ramjet. A scramjet is so fast that the combustion inside won't even occur inside the engine. It occurs outside the engine at the nozzle area because it would flame out. It's just going so fast. So you actually wind up using part of the fuselage, usually at the back end of your aircraft or missile, as your propulsion nozzle.
Hey, Christine, would you make a noise? This fox is in the backyard and the cage is sitting on there. So I want you to scare him off and then get the cage in and put some more feed out. He's out there. The baby fox is out there eating right now.
That sounds a lot of fun. So anyway, so the scramjet actually has a nozzle. The body of a scramjet has to be designed specifically for being able to bring in the air and to have propulsion as an integral part. The fuselage of the scramjet, the entire fuselage is part of your engine. In essence, part of the intake and exhaust nozzle. And usually they do CFRD, which is continuous flow, computational flow dynamics systems, to be able to figure all that out. They have to use a lot of computational fluid flow dynamics and to design the system. And it's not straightforward. It takes a lot of sophistication to design those kind of engines. So anybody developing a scramjet engine has to have a high level of sophistication computationally to do that. And you got to do a lot of testing because just because your model says it's going to work don't mean dink them until you go out and try it. So what is this here? That's another Russian weapon article here. All right. That's pretty much what I wanted to show y'all in here. Let me stop the share. So Lee, that's what I wanted to talk about. I just was giving kind of a background of these systems, talking about what they are, what could be on this ship, and showing you that it has range. These systems, even the older caliber missiles, would be a huge threat off the shore like this. This Zircon missile would be far worse if it's capable of achieving a fraction of the velocity they claim. So if it's capable of achieving that velocity, then watch out, guys. I mean, these things, this is a serious situation we're in to have that so close off coast. 150 miles is close. What I was showing you for the caliber missile was based on a ship firing from 1,200 miles off coast, way off coast. So
10 times further, basically.
Yeah. So when it's
150 to 200 miles off the coast, and it's varying as it goes down the coast. It's actually getting further off of the coast now. It was actually closest when it was going by Virginia, North Carolina.
Okay, so it went from north to south, though. It could turn around.
Yes, sir. Correct. And it's headed towards Cuba as far as we know.
Well, the thing about a frigate is they're very maneuverable. It's a smaller ship. They can maneuver that thing around a lot. It might make it difficult to track, but that thing can get out there and move around. It's, they're faster than a sub or a bigger ship. So they're very maneuverable. Okay, so you don't know how close it will get or how far away it get, but it's still, even in Cuba, but it's a huge threat to us because Cuba is definitely way within that distance I was showing y'all earlier. Way within.
Cuba's 90 miles from Key West.
So, Florida, the entire southeast. You can hit New York from Cuba. with that thing. You know.
Yes, yes, absolutely. You could hit New York from Cuba.
So, this is Cuban Missile Crisis territory, guys. This is a system with 16 nuclear missiles, or what we're told.
Which is more missiles than were in the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Exactly, and these are more powerful missiles.
Correct.
They probably, even if Russia is still somewhat primitive on their aiming systems, whether the nuke, it's not as important, but they're better than they were. So these missiles are far more of a threat than what was put into Cuba in 1962, a little over 60 years ago.
And this is what I was saying on the program before you came on. I think that this is equivalent to or more dangerous than the Cuban Missile Crisis.
So
simply because we're already in a conflict.
Oh, yeah.
Not directly involved, but we're supporting them. The Russians are now saying that the U.S. is threatening, according to the Wall Street Journal, that U.S. officials are threatening to go into Ukraine into Crimea and remove the Russians with the Ukrainians from Crimea. That was on Russian propaganda channels just last night. So when you talk about the threat level we were at, and by the way, the Cuban Missile Crisis was one of the closest we've ever been to a nuclear war. And with this vessel going down our coast now, I think that we're closer to a nuclear war than we are or we were during the Cuban Missile Crisis, because in the Cuban Missile Crisis, the missiles were on a ship, but they couldn't be fired from the ship. They had to be brought ashore and erected and so on and so forth to fire. Now,
there were submarines with nuclear torpedoes, and in fact, one of those submarines, our forces were trying to get it to surface, and we're dropping depth charges just to try to get to surface. The commander of the submarine thought we were trying to destroy their submarine. He ordered his men to launch a nuclear torpedo, and one of the guys refused to follow the order, and that's the only thing that kept us out of a nuclear war. Was one of the guys who was in that chain who was supposed to launch it refused. He was blacklisted for the rest of his life for refusing to follow that order, which that's why we're here today. If that man had followed his order, it'd be a different world today than it is currently.
Well, the craziest part about it is Putin's new policy or belief is that the Russians could strike Newport News with a single nuclear warhead and the United States would not respond. That's the thinking inside the Russian military, which is frightening.
Well, and that's the key thing you got to remember. It's not what we think, it's what they think on the adversary.
Right.
It's reality isn't, sometimes reality don't matter. It's what the other people perceive as reality. If your enemy thinks reality is different than what it really is, it's really their perception of reality that counts if they're going to react to it. And apparently the perception of reality on that side is that we're about to attack them, we're going to do this or we're going to do that. You just carried a little snippet showing that they believed that we were going to directly support attack or in some fashion of Crimea. And I have said for a long time that Crimea would be something that Russia would be willing to go to nuclear war over, because that is such an existential piece of their Navy that they think they need Crimea, and they're on the verge of maybe possibly losing Crimea. We don't know how that would turn out, but the threat to Crimea in their mind's eye is sufficient to launch a nuclear war.
Absolutely. And I'm actually looking for that video now of where the Russians are saying that they think the U.S. is going to aid Ukraine in removing Russians from Crimea here. And let me here we go. I've got it just for you. Let me get the audio up for those of you who speak Russian. And then I'm going to pipe this over to you there, Greg. So is that you can see it, share it with your folks, and we're going to share it with our folks here at the same time. So subtitles will be here on the bottom.
I do believe this should be coming through on mine. What you were showing earlier did.
Excuse me, I said Washington Post. It's from the New York Times. Is citing the White House, saying that the U.S. is going to help Ukraine take back, and they say the Russian Crimea. It's not Russian, it's Ukrainian, but that's what they're saying.
So I just remind everybody that what matters here is the perception on the other side. Perceptions don't match. So whatever you think is or is not, what matters here is what people thinks is, and what they're willing to do is a function of that. And if that means to launch an attack on us, then like Lee was saying earlier, you better get ready. You better prep. I mean, that's something I've been teaching on this channel for a long time. Is you got to get ready for the worst. You know, we hope and pray for the best. I hope and pray that none of this happens. You know, I'm investing some money in some things that do require electrical power here with my microgreens and my mushroom development and some recent stuff I've done in my greenhouse. But I've got a worm farm and raised beds. I can grow and survive without power if I need to. But it's not, my first choice. I've got a well. If power goes out, I'm just going to have to rip out all the plumbing and drop buckets down it. Those little short buckets. But yeah, we are in a dire situation, guys. You've got to prepare for your water. Like Lee was saying earlier in a previous video, there's rules of threes. You can only live 3 minutes without air, so you might need a gas mask. You can only live 3 days without water. You can survive 3 weeks without food. Oh yeah, but you're only 3 hours in the elements. If you're cold and things like that can kill you in 3 hours, possibly even sooner. So that's all the rule of threes you got to bear in mind. And you need to watch my playlist. I got a playlist on my Green Greg's channel for nuclear survival. The bad news about a nuclear war is you're probably going to survive it, at least at first.
And Greg, I've got up on the screen here. We had talked about the Russian intelligence vessel that was just 24 miles off the coast of Hawaii. And this is that vessel as per recorded. And people say, oh no, Lee, that can't be. That's, the Coast Guard, the military would be out there looking at that if that were a Russian vessel. Well, no, folks, this is the Coast Guard. Just like we just saw the Coast Guard off of the coast of Cuba. Well, here is the Coast Guard off the coast of Hawaii. And I believe this is one of their Falcon jets or Ravens that they have. You can actually look it up. CG 2014 is the number of this aircraft. So, in fact, I will go and look that up and see if I can tell you what aircraft that is. And the fact that, yeah, there it is. So CG 2014, let's put that up over here. And let me get you a image of it. And then I will show that to you there. So here is the aircraft that took the photographs, the video image that we saw. And this is the video image that the aircraft took. Now, we can see the latitude and longitude. So you guys at home, you can write this down and you can put this on your own chart plotter. You can put this into Google Earth. You can, however you want to do it. It doesn't matter. But this is the longitude and latitude of the aircraft. You can see it was flying at 199 knots. Had a heading of 170 degrees true as opposed to magnetic, and was flying at an altitude of 2,557 feet above sea level. The target was just 2 nautical miles away. The elevation, 0 feet, because it's at sea level. This is the longitude. This is the latitude of that vessel right there, recorded. And this is all the way back on January the 11th of this year. So just 11 days ago. And it was 8:41 and 29 seconds Zulu. That's Greenwich Mean Time. So this is in the morning. As far as I'm concerned, I believe that's a good ways out there. It would be morning. And so this vessel was out there flying, and we've got video of it. Now, is it going to be there a while? Yes. How do we know that? Because you see this line here coming off the bow of the ship. It's taking on food and water from this other vessel here. So they're going to get supplies from it, but they are fueling it while it is underway. And so this is the refueling vessel that is refueling this Russian intelligence vessel.
Hey, you know, that's an important point, Lee, because that's one of the things we've underfunded in our military. We get so caught up on weapon systems, we forget to fund the tenders. The ships are known as tenders, and the infrastructure to keep it all going, and to buy sufficient ammunition to keep a war going. We are low on all these things. So how in the world are we supposed to fight any war that's going to last over a few hours? We got a problem because we get into a slugfest with China or someone like that. We need depth. We need these tenders. We need logistics. We need ammo. We've got to start beefing up on this stuff.
Absolutely. Agree with you 100%. And the problem is, the idiots that we have in command right now are in charge. They're not doing anything about it.
Idiots.
They're more worried about what flavor of ice cream they get with sprinkles.
That's right. Or teaching all kind of little social programs to the soldiers instead of fighting. You know, instead of teaching them how to fight, they're teaching them how to believe in all kind of other things. Wokeism. I don't want to get all into it here, but you know what?
Yeah, somebody was saying that the Coast Guard is a branch of the U.S. military. You may not think so, but they are.
They are.
The U.S. Coast Guard, even though they're under the Department of Transportation, the U.S. Coast Guard is a branch of the military for the United States.
They are, definitely.
So I've had that argument and won.
Yeah. All right,
so do your research. You will find out that the U.S. Coast Guard is a branch of service of the United States.
Well, I'm getting a post in my my channel for one of my nuke survival videos. I got a whole nuke survival playlist that people need to pay attention to. Let me see here. I might come back to my channel and hit the home button, and I'm going to share on here just so people can see this. And give me a second here. Oops, I hit the wrong thing. Anyway, let me come in here and do the share screen.
I don't think there's going to be a draft.
There's no time for that. All right, so this is, if you come in and see my channel on YouTube, on the Green Grades channel. So I do cover worm and garden topics, war topics, and other things. This is my nuclear survival and prepping list right here. This has got a lot of nuclear survival videos, nuclear bug out, what to do. This goes into great detail about radiation and how to shield yourself from radiation, different forms, how much you can withstand. This has got more detail in these two videos than I've seen anywhere else on YouTube. And this is actually the nuclear bug out. This is kind of, you know, what to do in the first and second 24 hours. I did those with Stacy Zavicki. And this is about, you know, your nuclear monitoring equipment here. This video here is why grid down is worse than you can imagine. I'm here talking about what happens if the nuclear spent fuel rods melt off. And I'm showing in here the details of how bad that is. And this is Dr. Peter Vincent Pry video I did with him. The late Dr. Peter Pry. This is probably one of the last videos I did. I don't know. No, it may not be the last one, but he passed away a few months ago. He was the head of the EMP Task Force on National and Homeland Security. I am the Alabama State Director of that group. I have chaired 2 power grid defense conferences. So this is all, and this is a nuclear power plant. This guy's got some concepts for safer nuclear power plants. I've done some of that kind of stuff in here. So a lot of content here, guys. Oops, I didn't mean to start a video. Hit the back arrow. What I want to do is copy the channel. I think I got the channel link copy. Let me see if I can get into chat here. Oops, that's not it. I'm gonna try to share some of this stuff on your channel here if I get it selected right. Give me a second.
New York Prepper is fake news, Heathen. And stop spamming my chat.
All right, bang, there is my Green Greg's channel. For those that haven't seen it yet, appreciate some subscribers. Yeah, because y'all need to come. There's my Silverhead News channel. That's why I might should have done this video from here, but I thought I'd get more people doing it on Green Greg's. So I thought this was news that needed to get out. But I'm migrating a lot of this kind of content over to this channel. That's my goal. But I thought this was an important message. It needed to get out, so I was sharing it. Now let me go back over here to your channel here and try to get this in here. And I'm going to find my playlist. Let's see, we're going to hit the playlist here. Find it right. Oh, I'm in the wrong spot. I hit the home. Come back here, Nuclear Survival Playlist. That plays all those videos. I'm going to try to bring it back to your channel here and share that. And I've got I've got a Rumble channel just like this one. And that's right here. For the people watching on my channel, I'm sharing this stuff on Lee's channel. He's got 1,073 people watching on his Rumble channel. I got 444 watching on my Green Greg's channel. So there we go. We shared a bunch of that stuff now. And I'm actually logged in to the Rumble channel as Silverhead News. And that is from my Silverhead Rumble channel. But I'm watching this and live cast it from my Green Greg's channel. So I'm kind of like in 2 places. This is a multi-dimensional podcast tonight, guys. Because Lee's on Rumble, I'm on YouTube. We're broadcasting each of these live in both places. I'm on my Rumble channel and his channel and broadcasting from my YouTube channel. So it's kind of a Mobius strip, right, Lee?
Yeah, stand by. I've got an issue here with a fire alarm in the studio. I'll be back.
Oh, don't catch fire. Well, while he's doing that, then I am going to try to paste some of the stuff into my.
Open the door. I need to open both.
Oh, fire in the house. By the way, for those that don't know, Lee is also a firefighter, volunteer firefighter.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that new
Cooking.
channel there.
Oh.
So there is that's a pretty good video there.
The exhaust fan in the bathroom. Close the back door and open the kitchen door. We're open the kitchen window.
So I'm sharing the screen of your screen right now.
All right, I'm back.
All right.
Sorry about that.
All right, Lee, I've covered most of the stuff I came in here to cover. Maybe we can take some questions now. What do you think?
Yeah, sounds good to me. If you're having a problem with your smoke detector, even though you put a brand new battery in it, you may want to take an air hose or a can of air and blow out around the sensor. If it's looking for something that blocks the illuminator to the receiver. And so you've got a diode on one side emitting a light source, and you have a receiver on the other side, and it's looking for anything that goes between that and degrades it. So if you get a spider in there, if you get some dust in there or whatever, it'll set off your smoke detector, even with a new battery in it, or if it's like ours and hooked into the electrical system of the studio. So that's one thing you can do to check on your smoke detector if it continues to go off. So if we've got questions, put them into the chat on Greg's channel or on mine, and we're going to alternate back and forth and answer questions.
We got a good question here from my North Alabama hiking subscriber. He says, is there a large number of EAMs being sent out right now? What, Lee,
there is an ungodly number of EAMs being sent out, and the largest EAM sent out, and let me go back and get it here. It was like 140 characters, and that was without a repeat.
When was that?
Excuse me?
That today? How long ago was that?
That was today. Yeah, that was today. So there's a lot going on with the EAMs. That's why we're monitoring. But look, folks, we don't normally at KLW World News, we don't follow EAMs daily. We have people who are part of our network that do. And so when there's something out of the ordinary and an exorbitant amount of them, then we will talk about it. But if there's not a huge number of EAMs going out and it's business as usual, we don't say a word, because EAMs are broadcast on almost a daily basis, or basically a daily basis. But huge ones and massive amounts of them is not a normal thing, nor is that a normal thing to be happening on a Sunday. So we started paying close attention to what was transpiring 48 hours ago, when I said that the Russians were about to start attacking the Ukrainians. And I showed the map and showing all of the activity that the Russians and where they were engaging the Ukrainians along the eastern and southern defensive line for the Ukrainians. And within 12 hours, that map lit up with artillery strikes and bombs and so on and so forth. Not so much incursions of troops, because the Ukrainians aren't really fighting the Russian troops. Ukrainians are using drones and artillery to obliterate the Russians. And in fact, there is an area in Soledar that's north of Bakhmut. And by the way, KLW World News now has a simulator that has pretty accurate terrain data in it. So we can fly you over an area in our simulator, our helicopter simulator, and we can actually show you the battlefield and show you the terrain and the buildings that are being attacked and so on and so forth. And we do that through geolocation. So, and we're going to do that later on in the broadcast. But what I wanted to tell you was, we've been closely following what has been transpiring in Bakhmut and north of that in Soledar. And I can speak about this with some intelligence and some practical experience, because I've been supporting the Ukrainian military since August of 2014. In fact, I traveled to Ukraine in January of 2015 to train Ukrainian special forces and to come up with the list of equipment that those soldiers should be equipped with to go out on the battlefield. And those soldiers have been using the equipment I recommended, the drones and so on and so forth, that I've been working with them since 2014. So here we are, 9 years later, and we're still supporting the Ukrainians. So the war over there is pretty intense. A lot of the troops are coming in, and those Russian prisoners, because over 80% of the people fighting in and around Soledar are Wagner, And those Wagner forces are hardened criminals, people who were spending the life in prison, 20 years in prison for rape, murder, you name it, violent crimes. And there's one area there where the Russians are continuing to push these Wagner forces into. Well, so many Wagner forces have been killed there that literally the new Wagner forces are climbing over the dead Wagner forces to get near the Ukrainians. And the Russians have named that area of the battlefield in Soledar the Bloody Hectare. So instead of Hamburger Hill, it's the Bloody Hectare there in Soledar. So we're going to hear more about that, and we're going to show you more about that and so on and so forth. But the war is kicking up. It is picking up. Now we are starting to see these attacks against the Ukrainians in the east, the attacks against the Ukrainians in the south. But the scariest part about this, and it's not scary for us, it's scary for the Europeans. And I'm going to show you this here in a moment when I get this loaded up for you. I want to show you the Russian positions. And a lot of people aren't aware of the fact that the Russians and the Belarusians, the folks from Belarus, are now on the same team. Because if you watched our program the other day, we gave you the news conference between the Russians and the Belarusians, where they talked about the Russians and the Belarusians are now going to have common air defense zone. They're going to have a common defense force. They're going to tie their currencies together. The Russians are going to move nuclear missiles and nuclear bombs into Belarus. So I'm going to put this screen up here for everybody to be able to see it. You can see it right there right now. And so this is Ukraine here, and this is where the Ukrainian forces were going north out of Kyiv the other day. Now, this line right here that you see on your screen, that is the border between Belarus and Poland. There are over 1,000 Russian troops right here. That is 3 miles from the Polish border. And what happened on the 19th? Another train load of military equipment was delivered here to Brest. So this is the reason when you look on the map and you see the AWACS jets that are flying right here along this border, the reason they're doing that is they're watching this Russian troop buildup on the Polish border, folks. Now, what do we know about Russians? We know that, number one, they lie. They said that all of this was because of a military training exercise, a joint exercise between the Russians and the Belarusians, and that exercise was supposed to take place between January the 8th and January the 12th. Well, there's a problem, folks. You see, these Russian troops, they've been there since December the 13th. And the Russian Belarusian exercise ended on the 12th. So if it ended on the 12th, we want to know why another train load of tanks, armored personnel carriers, trucks, fuel trucks, and other command and control equipment, why is that delivered on the 19th if the exercise ended on the 12th? This is a full week after the exercise ended. Now, the other crazy thing is you can see here all of these different icons here in red. All of this is since December the 1st. If you go down here, these are the movements since December the 1st. So you will see that there is a whole lot less movement down here along the eastern flank of Ukraine than there is up here in Belarus. Also, all of the Russian ships and submarines bailed out of this military base right here back on the 11th. So we're not sure where they went. We're not sure what they're going to do, but a lot of all the Russian military vessels left this base on the 11th, including Russian submarines. So that's what I had, Greg.
Wow. Where do you think they went?
They're out in the Black Sea somewhere. And I think that's part of the reason why we keep seeing Forte 10 and 11 going further over here to the east to try to keep an eye on everything that's going on. But here is where the fleet comes from that comes over here and fires on Ukraine. So we believe that they're out over in here maneuvering, getting ready for something.
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me. So you got all these forces on the border with Poland. How many are there again?
There were 1,000 there on the, let me get you the date. The first 1,000 showed up on the 13th of December, and there's probably another 1,000 or two that have been moved in there since then, plus several. Each of these is train loads of military equipment and personnel. Plus the Belarusians have created a draft of their own. They have now requested all males from age 18 to 60 to report to local officials to verify their data, so as that the Belarusians can pull them up or call them up when all this gets kicked off.
Wow. So the whole thing was Poland is very anti-Russian, by the way. A lot of people don't realize that. But what I worry about with this whole thing with Belarus is that they may use the Belarusians as the patsies to launch the maybe a tactical nuke if they decide to, because they're given the capabilities, the weapon systems are given, have the ability to carry them, and supposedly they're training the Belarusians on the use of tactical nukes, and they're, when I hear they're actually giving them tactical nukes.
Yes,
that's crazy.
We broadcast, and after this show's over with Greg here, I will go and get you the news conference where Vladimir Putin and the president of Belarus discuss. And by the way, this is straight from the Russian government's website, translated into English, where it shows, and you hear it in English, what they're talking about and their special weapons, and the fact that they are sending special weapons into Belarus, and the fact that Belarus is going to have an astronaut in space with the Russians. That's one of the other things. The first Belarusian is going to go in space to the International Space Station, as well as Belarusian pilots are going to travel to Russia and get trained in the use of nuclear bombs from aircraft. And the Belarusian military is going to be trained in Belarus on how to fire nuclear missiles from mobile launchers, which is saying that the Russians are going to be moving those mobile launchers into Belarus. So it's getting nothing short of fugly, folks, and it's doing it very rapidly.
So my suspicion, I don't know, Lee, but I have the suspicion that Russia might use the the Belarusians as patsies to launch nukes.
I agree with that. I think that they want to use the Belarusians as cannon fodder.
Bingo.
More food for the meat grinder.
I mean, Lukashenko has to know this. I mean, he's the guy accepting the stuff in the first place.
No, he's stupid. He wants a statue. See, that's why, and this is what I keep telling everybody, that's why they met at a big Russian museum. Because Putin was walking around going, there'll be a statue like you here.
He'll go down in history, all right, but he's going to destroy Belarus. I mean, if he does this, he is dooming Belarus. That's just crazy. That's insane. So, and he's got to know that he's dooming his own country. So, wow, it's wild what ego will do to someone. Ego,
and it is all ego.
It is crazy, but I've seen ego do that to people before.
Oh, absolutely.
Ego is very dangerous. Of course, according to the, oh, well, I won't go into that here, but guys, we have to be wide awake to this. These people aren't thinking the way we think. Putin Lukashenko, they don't think the way we think in America and the West. They got a whole different worldview. I've talked about worldview a lot on my channel, and their worldview does not match our worldview. What they consider a threat does not match what we consider a threat. They're in a wholly different paradigm. So we've got to be aware of this, and that's why we are under a threat here. What they consider existential threat to them, we wouldn't consider an existential threat, but they're paranoid. They're very paranoid over there, and all this is flaming it up. So this is the reason we need to be prepared. I'm not going to sit here and say that we're going to get hit by a nuke.
Correct. I'm not going to say that either.
I'm not out here saying it's going to happen. So some people come here, I've seen in the chat room go, "Oh, fear porn." What we're telling you, you better be prepared. I mean, you know, nobody's telling you you're going to have a wreck tomorrow morning, but you went and bought insurance, didn't you? This is the same kind of thing. You know, as Lee said, we're probably a greater risk now than we were in the Cuban Missile Crisis. This is not non-existent. There is a war going on right now, and and the future of Russia is in peril, because if they do lose, Putin will probably lose his life, and the Russian Federation, if they should lose, runs the risk of dissolvement, because a lot of the republics would see the military as weak and probably rebel. A lot of them would like to go their own way anyway. So
there's an internal power structure where Wagner wants to take control when Putin is gone.
Yes, right now.
Can you imagine a terrorist organization like Wagner taking control?
There is a three-way power struggle amongst the elements of the military right now.
Yep.
And that is something to be concerned with. You know, it's kind of like, that happened in Rome too, where you had, Julius Caesar and the various ones fighting each other at one time. So, this happens, and when a strong man like Putin goes away. So there's all kind of dynamics that could pop up. On the other hand, if Russia somehow took Ukraine, then Poland and other countries would suddenly be at grave risk. And that's something that they're trying to show here. So what I say is the war in Ukraine is not on Ukraine's side, because Ukraine, they've only got so many people, and Russia may suck, but they've still got deeper pockets of people and more factories and a bigger budget than Ukraine. So over time, if Russia is willing to continue to prosecute this, and they apparently are, then time is not on Ukraine's side. Ukraine must have decisive wins soon, or they're going to be up a creek without a paddle. And if they lose, then Russia's on the border of Poland and other countries. So what happens then? You tell me. I don't have the answers to that. I'm just saying, guys, this is all serious. Maybe Putin is a crossover, somebody says in my chat. I don't know. What do you mean by crossover? So we had a question from my channel. Maybe you got a question from your channel, Lee. Anybody on your side got a question they want to ask?
Let's see here if anybody has a question here.
Anybody got questions? Bring them up. Now's a good time.
If you got questions, put them into the chat. So is this more of an EMP or a nuclear bomb? This is more of an EMP threat in our opinion, but they still could hit. I mean, there's 16 missiles on the vessel. So if they wanted to target cities in the United States, they could.
Here's what I would see happening, Lee. If Russia decides to launch a first strike against us, if they're on any kind of strike, they might as well go whole in for first strike, or they're going to be toast. So what I would see is it would start with cyber attacks, because they want to disable our communications abilities as much as possible. So they would have massive cyber attack. They may attack our satellites, and there would be EMP attacks all simultaneously. And probably on the ground, you would have direct kinetic attacks against power stations and other critical infrastructure from maybe Russian sleeper cells. They may have alliances with sleeper cells from other countries, like the Iranian sleeper cells in this country, maybe Chinese sleeper cells. We know that China has been procuring land near all our major military installations for some strange reason, and that's been a very disconcerting thing to a lot of us. And the EMP super weapons would take out our comms, our communications, attacks on our satellites would reinforce that. So, and they would go first and foremost for our strategic weapons. The first thing they would go for, they want to, if they're going to launch a first strike on us, they want to neuter our ability to react. So they would take out our SAC bases, our ground-based missile bases. They would take out our submarine bases. And they would hope that our submarines at sea would not be able to communicate and get the EAMs. They can't launch without it. Our system is just set up that way. It just won't enable a launch. And they have a lot of missile defense systems in and around Moscow should this fail and some of it get through. Plus, not to mention that Moscow has a subway system that's 400 feet underground. It's got blast doors. It's built as a huge nuclear survival bunker system. I've been all through that subway. It is deep. It's deepest subway I've ever been in by a long shot. You go way down into that system. It's beautiful under. They got beautiful. Every substation is different. They're all beautiful art, done back in the Soviet era, commie stuff. As pretty as commie junk can be. I'm no commie by any stretch of imagination, but the artwork is pretty. They put a lot of effort in those substations way back when. And the word is that they got a lot of offshoot tunnels and bunkers and stuff off to the side. And supposedly they just had a drill about a year ago, right before they launched this exercise, putting most of the people in Moscow into these bunkers. So they actually had a massive drill. And there's also other underground command centers and bunkers throughout Russia for the military command, for Putin, and for people in various places. When I was in the Army, we were told that they even had bunkers for their cows and chickens and pigs. We don't have anything.
The problem that the Russians have now, and I've got a bunch of questions here we're going to go through real quick.
Yeah.
The problem with the bunkers and so on and so forth in Russia is after the collapse, a bunch of those bunkers are now businesses and they have not been maintained. And so you can't even close the doors on the bunkers. They don't have everything that they used to have is not there anymore. It's been pillaged, robbed, and stolen. So even the Russians had 2 Doomsday planes, and folks snuck onto the Russian military base and stole all of the two-way radios, all of the cables, and all the electronics out of one of the Doomsday planes because it wasn't even guarded. That's the level of disrepair in the former Soviet Union now. Also, question is, would this be a nuclear bomb or an EMP crippling? If I were in charge of it, it would be a combination thereof. My first 3 rounds would be an EMP. I would fire the first one straight over the center of the country. I would fire one a little bit to the south, and I would fire another one a little bit to the north, and have 3 nuclear blasts high aloft go off simultaneously. Additionally, the EMP from those nuclear blasts high aloft would also take out a shitload of satellites over top of the United States. So not only would we lose grid, we would lose satellite communications, we would lose internet, we would lose power, we would lose water and sewage, fuel, the ability to coordinate our grids together. It would be really, really, really fugly in the event that that were to happen. Now, somebody said something about Wagner wanting to sponsor a coup. Yeah, maybe, but they think that they can win over and take control rather than doing a coup. It's easier to to catch flies with sugar than it is with salt. And so a coup would be pretty salty, and the folks in Wagner are now trying to make themselves look superior to the army by saying, we were the only ones that could take Soledar. We're the ones that are fighting so well in Bakhmut. But yet they are losing Russian criminals by the busload, because over 80% of the Wagner forces that have been delivered to Soledar and Bakhmut are now dead. And the Ukrainians are killing them by the hundreds every day. In fact, yesterday, when this got kicked off, the Russians lost 800 troops just yesterday in the fighting between Soledar, Bakhmut, and a few other places along the line. And then, Greg, somebody asked about you. they asked if you had done anything military-wise over your career.
Yes, I was in the Army I joined for 3 years. I extended 9 months. I went to Fort Jackson, then I went to Fort Bragg. I was an armorer at Fort Bragg. I was there during the Iranian hostage crisis, all packed up, thought I was on my way to Iran, but they had other plans. And then I went to Fort Greely, Alaska. I was at the Cold Regions Test Center in Fort Greely, Alaska for 2 years and a month. Actually, 2 years and 3 weeks. And then when I got out of the Army, I came back to the lower 48. I actually joined the Alabama National Guard for 2 years, and I served as a civil servant for the Army working missile defense. So I worked in missile defense under, at the time, it was headed up by Ambassador Hank Cooper, who I've actually interviewed on this chapter, on this channel, on my Green Rigs channel, talking power grid defense. And I have worked on test sets for the M1 tank. And I've worked on test sets is what you test out the electronics for looking for failures. So I developed test sets for the M1 tank, and I developed test sets additionally for the F-15 fighter craft. So I've got plenty of military background. You know, heck, when I was in high school, I was an ROTC. My dad was in the Army. My son was in the Army. I mean, my brother in the Army. Plenty of uncles have been in the Army and Air Force and on back. My family's been in every war ever fought in the United States history. Hey, I got to step away for just for a second, Lee.
Okay.
Share your screen or something while I step away.
All right. Hold on a second here. Stand by. I'll get you taken care of. So let me get this up here a second until I can come up with something. There we go. All right. So as far as my career here, actually, let me do it this way. There's an easier way to do it. So I took ROTC at James Madison University. I was the inventor of the helmet cam for the U.S. Army Telemedical Command. I worked under General Zychuk at the Pentagon. I invented telemedicine. I invented telemaintenance. I designed and built the original prototype for the PVS 14 night vision goggle. I was the senior technologist for the U.S. Army at Fort Benning, Georgia. I worked on the digitized soldier program, the SIPE program. I was on Land Warrior, Force 21 Land Warrior, and I was senior technical staff for CCOM, Communications and Electronics Command at Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, where I was in charge of all wireless communications globally for the U.S. Army and military intelligence. I also am the inventor, designer of the Trojan Spirit, the TSC-128 Bravo, that is used by intelligence agencies all over the world that are NATO or that are, well, NATO countries as well as U.S. And other allies that the U.S. has. I worked on the STU as well as the STI, for those of you who know what that is. And like I said, I invented Trojan Spirit, the TSC-128 Bravo, and I did all of the SATCOM for the U.S. Army. In fact, if you were in Desert Storm, if you were in the Second Gulf War, if you were in Afghanistan or Iraq or any of those places, you have used, if you were in the U.S. Army, most likely you have used something that I designed. In fact, ever since the first Desert Storm, no, I was lovingly referred to as a goddamn contractor, as opposed to being, hold on.
All right. So for myself, you know, I designed.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
That was Mainsail doing a test count there.
Oh.
At the top of the hour. And I was going to just show a video here. So you're back, Greg?
I'm back.
Okay, hold on. Let me.
Go ahead and show a video.
Okay, so this will give you a little bit of my background. Yeah, I traveled all over the world. And so here you can have a little look-see. And by the way, folks, this was recorded back in the 90s.
Hey, is it copyright? I don't have an issue on my channel with it.
No, you're not going to have an issue on your channel because I'm in this, so I have the authority to share it.
Okay, good.
And some of you may recognize the show.
Yeah, I know the show.
This is a vehicle I designed.
That's Lee right there.
Yeah, that's me.
Somebody just said you never show yourself. There you are. I corrected him. I said in some of your videos, and you are in your videos. This is Lee years ago.
And by the way, if you saw the news the other day, they're still using these binoculars.
Yeah, we're not getting the sound from it, but that's all right. So yeah, I was involved in designing test sets with thermal imaging system on the M1 tank, and a lot of the stuff I've designed is probably still in the field too in the test set world, and for the M1, F-15, M1A1. I was also involved in a lot of design that's on the International Space Station today. I designed all the interconnects, the wiring, the pinouts, everything on nodes 2 and 3, the International Space Station. I said all that stuff. A lot of the robotic systems, the utility rail systems, I was involved in a lot of that. So I got heavy fingerprints on the International Space Station myself. Quite involved in, this rocket we just launched from NASA. I did my own rockets. Prior to that, I was myself into the developing hybrid rockets, launched some high altitude balloons. So both Lee and I have got quite a technical background. Lee, as you can see here, he's talking about thermal imaging systems. I don't hear the sound from the video, but he's pointing out a lot of the aspects of what you can determine from these systems about when a vehicle's been operating, when it's been running. Because I've heard this video before. So Lee is quite the technologist, especially in the imaging systems and quite a few other electronic systems. Lee, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to make sure I hadn't lost your voice because I can't hear. Yeah, the video you're playing is silent, but that's okay. But
Oh, you can't hear it?
No, I couldn't hear it.
Oh, hold on. Let me fix that for you, Greg. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the sound.
I'm not real sure why you weren't able to hear it, but
so I got a guy talking on my channel, Raleigh Herrera, talking about defense systems for stuff like we're talking about. He's talking about using the airships like we used to do in World War II. Yeah, I've often thought that would be a good platform for launching a rapid launch of defense systems against missiles like we're talking about. I've actually done some videos about stopping hypersonic missiles, where basically you throw a wall of smaller interceptors at them.
all right, Greg, tell me if you can hear it now.
No sound.
You hear it now?
No.
Hold on. Let me share screen. Let's move it. Hold on. Let me do it this way. so you guys can see it. So let me move this over here. Let me put that up there. Oops, that was not it. Here we go. This one. And then what I need to do is share screen 2, share sound. Oh, come on.
Yeah, you got to put the sound through your mic that I'm hearing you from, because I've actually got.
Yeah, no. I've got.
If I didn't, that we'd have all kind of feedback here.
Yeah, but I can.
I'm surprised it's not coming through your mic.
It's not because I'm not playing it in here. Is the reason it's not coming.
Oh, okay. That's
I'm playing it through there. So let me close this and pull up, move this out of the way. That there, open that up full screen, bring this over here, share sound. We want screen 1. Share, you should see that there. That's not it. Maybe it thinks it's screen 2. Sorry about this, guys. I don't normally use Zoom for what I do. And it did not take it the way I wanted it to take it. So actually I should be able to. No, it's not. All right, well then, yeah, we'll do it there. So hold on. So if I move this here and put it there. And then I grab this. Well, it says it's sharing that, but why is it not?
Has anybody got a question on my side?
Always depended on
You hear
closely
that?
observing.
I will hear it now.
Okay, all right. So
Pretty loud, actually.
all right, hold on. Let me move it over there. So now you can see it, right? Yep, looks like it says you can see it. Okay, so here we go. Sorry, folks. So this is from Modern Marvels back in 1997.
We now return to security systems on Modern Marvels. Inventor Lee Wheelbarger is a private citizen who believes that the best defense is an aggressive offense. Security is always dependent on closely observing the bad guy, and Wheelbarger's electronic creations have extended the eyes and ears of America's intelligence network.
What we have here is a pair of gyroscopically stabilized binoculars.
Periodically, select reconnaissance teams trek to Wheelbarger's rural Virginia retreat for an update on the latest in surveillance tools.
In addition, that activates the binoculars. Anytime you depress on the top, you'll hear a click sound. As long as that's depressed, the image that you're seeing is stabilized. You just bring them up, and it gives you a stabilized image of the battlefield, so that you can easily.
Say what?
Not carrying the image. I was getting the voice, but not the image. It was like playing in the little screen but it wasn't going to the full screen.
It shows to me that I'm sending it to you.
Yeah, but it's only playing in the little screen, not the full screen. You got to hit the share button within Zoom.
No, you got to click that.
Oh, I've actually enabled you to do that. So yeah, you got to do it on your end.
Yeah, but I'm saying the image I'm sending to you is me holding the binoculars, right?
Yeah, but that's in the
Right, but if you click on that to go full screen, you'll see it full screen.
actually, no. Well, there it is. Go ahead.
All right. One more time.
Inventor Lee Wheelbarger is a private citizen who believes that the best defense is an aggressive offense. Security is always dependent on closely observing the bad guy, and Wheelbarger's electronic creations have extended the eyes and ears of America's intelligence network.
What we have here is a pair of gyroscopically stabilized binoculars.
Periodically, select reconnaissance teams trek to Wheelbarger's rural Virginia retreat for an update on the latest in surveillance tools.
In addition, that activates the binoculars. Anytime you depress on the top, you'll hear a click sound. As long as that's depressed, the image that you're seeing is stabilized. You just bring them up, and that gives you a stabilized image of the battlefield, so that you can easily acquire targets and identify them, even from a moving vehicle. Go ahead and try it.
Wheelbarger began his career by aiding local law enforcement. Policemen overcome by assailants are often held by their own handcuffs. Wheelbarger devised a universal handcuff key, able to open any set of cuffs. High-profile kidnap targets, from the late Princess Diana and her family to President Clinton, have since worn the key hidden on their clothes or bodies. Wheelbarger specializes in deciphering the pictures created by thermal imaging cameras. When heat passes through the lens of such a camera, it strikes a detector array capable of registering minute temperature differences. The thermal pulse is then converted into a standard video image.
You'll notice that we're observing an individual in this parking lot, but a small mouse is going to run across the lower part of the screen, and the thermal imager is going to pick it up. Here's our mouse. As he comes up, runs across. That's how accurate a thermal imager is.
Thermal imagers look through surfaces that would block even the most sensitive night vision equipment. Here is the heat from a boiler deep within a ship. These pictures also reveal how recently cars or any machinery have been operated.
Now, the things that we can tell in this photograph is, number one, it was a cooler time of the year, because you see a lot of hot right here, right against the window. That's because the defroster was on. It heated the glass from the inside. We can also see that the rearview mirror has a heater inside of it. There's massive amounts of heat being radiated from underneath the vehicle. This is the muffler on the rear. This is the heat generated from underneath the engine compartment. And we can tell that the front brakes get hotter than the rear brakes. So obviously we probably have disc brakes on the front.
In some surveillance situations, miniaturization is the key to penetrating an enemy's defense.
The camera is a high-resolution camera that can use a standard lens like we have on it here, or it can be fitted with a pinhole lens, which will allow us to look through a hole in the wall, approximately the same size as a thumbtack makes. And gives us about a 120-degree field of view inside the room, even though it's only looking through the hole the size of a thumbtack.
Audio surveillance casts an even wider net. This handheld spectrum analyzer can listen in on any cell phone or wireless microphone transmission anywhere in the world.
And just so you know, I've got the new version of that sitting on the shelf behind me.
It tracks down signals in the RF spectrum and can detect up to 1,000 frequencies at a time. During the Gulf War, this device was used to monitor conversations between Saddam Hussein and his Iraqi ambassadors, providing information critical to planning the ground invasion. American forces in the Gulf also benefited from rifle-mounted infrared lasers. These beams tracked Iraqi troops at night without giving away Allied positions. In this demonstration, a container of warm water doubles as an enemy soldier. Laser beams are now so sensitive that they can hear distant conversations held behind closed doors, converting tiny vibrations into audio recordings.
What we have here is an infrared laser that will fire a beam up to 3 miles away. We shine this against the glass on the outside of a building, and we can measure the vibration of that glass with this. As the glass vibrates from sounds inside the building, we can detect the movement of the glass, and that allows us to hear what's taking place inside the building.
Wheelbarger's innovations are highly sophisticated tools that can be used for good or ill. When we return, the technology that keeps powerful tools in the proper hands. Until recent modifications by the Secret Service, even the Oval Office was susceptible to having conversations monitored by distant lasers measuring window vibration. Modern marvels will return.
All right, Lee, let's wrap that up.
Okay, and I don't know what somebody asked me a question. How much would one of those cost? Would one of what cost? Riff, I have no idea what you're asking me. So let me. Now this is going to be the interesting part. Is to how do I get out of? I need to figure out how to, there we are. Ta-da. All right, I got you back.
Yeah, I stopped your share. I'm gonna re-enter it here, but
No, I don't need it.
it kind of got hosed up there. All right, Lee. So acoustic echo. Oh, somebody's talking about you. So maybe we should take another question and call it a video. We've been online here for let's see, almost 2 hours.
Yep.
I think 2 hours is the threshold. Nobody wants to watch a video on my channel that's over 2 hours long.
Oh, I have people that watch mine for 12 hours straight.
She run live the whole time. So
Yeah.
watching a recorded video later. So, all right. So, or one posted later on down the road. So, do we have any other questions in the audience here?
Yeah, if I got any more questions, put them in the chat on my side here.
Or on my side, either one.
The only question I had was they wanted to know how much the cost of one of those infrared laser listening devices was. They're not for sale and they don't use lasers anymore. Now we use high resolution cameras that we can look at, like a bag of potato chips or a leaf or a piece of paper in a room. And through sound vibrations, we can see that vibrate and hear what's taking place in the room. The problem with the laser listening device when you're listening to a window is it sounds like you're standing in that window. So when you're listening to a conversation inside of a building, it's like you're standing there at that window with the window open. So you're hearing all of the outside noise and all of the inside noise. So you're not hearing both. With the new system that looks through the glass at a leaf or a piece of paper or a potato chip bag is great inside of the building, then you're only hearing the conversation from inside the building. So the new system is much better than the old one.
Let's see here.
What do you think about EMPs happening in the US? What do you mean? What do I think about it? I think it would be horrible if it did. Do I think it's a likelihood? I'm not going to say that it's a likelihood. Do I think it could happen? Absolutely. Especially considering that we have a friggin' frigate off the coast of the United States, somewhere between 150 miles, 250 miles, depending upon where it is along the coastline. Could be a little farther than that as it goes further south. It's a significant threat to the United States as we speak. In my personal opinion, I think it's a greater threat than what we were facing during the Cuban Missile Crisis. The problem we have here is we don't have Kennedy in the White House. We have our illustrious POS, who's more interested in getting sprinkles on his ice cream cone than he is about being the president of the U.S.
Yeah, that's true. Sniffy Joe. I did a video on my Silverhead News about his ice cream cones and such things. Everybody should watch it. I did some humorous limericks talking about these guys and some short videos. So go to my YouTube Silverhead News and you can see that. Somebody says, would unplugged microwave work as a Faraday bag? You mean a cage? D, it can. It can. A lot of people use them for that, but you know, it just depends on how many decibels you got to be good to.
And you want to do more than unplug it, cut the cord off of it.
Yeah, that's even better. Cut the cord off. So yeah, a cord antenna, definitely an antenna leads inside of it. So, we get any questions on your end, Lee?
Just a question for the laser listening device or the camera listening device. It says, how does it compensate for inside air currents in the AC? Those air currents inside aren't resonating in the sound spectrum. So you're not hearing those air currents in that. You are hearing, you're hearing the conversation. So it only listens for between 20 to 20, from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. And voice is not even in that range. Voice is down in the bottom part of that. So it doesn't even have to go up to 20K. It could go up to, 1K and be able to cover the hearing human voice. So from 200 hertz to 1,000 hertz or 1,500 hertz or 2,000 hertz, it doesn't even have to go to 20,000 hertz. It could just cover 1/20th of the audio spectrum and cover the entire human voice. So I've never heard, you can hear an air conditioner running, but I've never heard the air currents have never interfered with it. Any questions on your end?
Well, one pointed out that we've had a lot of submarines around for some time. Why should we be more concerned with a frigate? That's the question that somebody's putting out.
Because the frigate has, well, first off, we know where every single Russian submarine is. Just like the one that they thought was lost the other day and nobody knew where it was. And the US showed the world where it was 24 hours after they said it was missing. Because the US knows where every single Russian sub is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
There's a Barrett Sea, and I called that out.
Yep.
Sure enough. So, all right, new days shared in my room here, my Sniffy Joe's ice cream video. All right, Lee, I think we've cooked this chicken. Maybe we should stick a fork in it and have dinner.
All right, buddy.
So I may call it a video here, and let's see I might go live later tonight on one or more of my channels. I might come back here, maybe go on the Silverhead News channel. So everybody check out my other channels. I've got Silverhead News on YouTube. I got Silverhead News on Rumble, and this is more of my content will be moving there. I wished I'd hit the record button on this and posted over there. We're going to have, and I've got also my Galactic Greg Space channel. And then I got a channel, so if we're stressing y'all out too much, I got a channel called Serenity Sounds to kind of soothe your nerves out and let you go to sleep after listening to all this stuff. I figure we might need that sometime. So there's no fear porn when you're listening to frogs or rain on a tin roof of a barn. And Lee and I we're trying to tell you what's going on here, and our whole message is to prepare. I go a little bit further. I try to be proactive to stop these things from happening. That's why I chaired 2 Power Grid Defense Conference. That's why I talk a lot in here. I ask you guys to take actions. I got a Freedom Restoration Foundation website that I pay for out of my pocket for people to be able to take action politically to try to thwart a lot of these things that they're trying to throw at us. And they've been working on this Survival Tribe Network, and one of our network members, WWIII, actually paid us up a site for people to participate out of our own pocket. So, we're paying for a lot of this stuff out of our own pockets to try to coordinate this stuff so that people can survive, thrive, and stay out of the hive so that we can have a better future. But, we still have to prep in case this stuff goes downhill. The problem is it can go downhill very, very, very fast, the step of a finger. If an EMP happens, it could be that you just think lights went out. Everything may seem just hunky-dory, but unbeknownst to you, the end of the world as we know it has started. And you may not even know it at first. So, but you will know over time when, the power don't come back on, and then and people start getting hungry and things start going south in a hurry. So, hey, go buy your beans and rice. Buy, put them in Mylar bags and try to make them last a while. Go buy, water filtration equipment. Do things like that. But you can also go to prepwithgreg.com and you can get long-term food storage there. And there's other prepping equipment you can get there. And there's a really good special on that deal right now. So there's a lot of stuff you can do to get yourself ready. Canned food lasts longer than the expiration date. I got a video on that. I got a video about going to the big box stores and buying things. So it's not all about me selling that other dry long-term food storage, but that's a good option, especially for caches, bug outs, and things like that, because it's so lightweight. New Days is putting a lot of websites on my channel. So you guys that are watching from Lee's channels, be sure to check out my channels. And I did earlier on put up a few links within there. So, and she's also shared Lee's network in here. So I appreciate that with everyone. I appreciate everyone on Lee's channels. I appreciate everybody. Lee, I appreciate you sharing this and the intel that you've been gathering, the fact that you're bringing this to our attention. I appreciate all the folks that are watching on my channel, all my mods. So I just want to thank everybody for being here. Lee, I'm ready to call it a day here, or a video. How do you think?
Yep, that's great, Greg. Greatly appreciate your time, sir, and your expertise. I always refer to you as our resident rocket scientist, which is no exaggeration by any stretch of the imagination. Greg has been involved in numerous rocket programs, holds some world records for some of the things that he has done, and still continues to support our military today at the Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama, a place that I spent some time. A lot of people don't realize that the CROWS system, the Crew Serve Remotely Operated Weapon System, was originally designed with Recon Optical and had a office right there at Huntsville, and the original prototype was done there. Additionally, IBAS and ITAS, which is an improved Bradley acquisition site and the improved TOW acquisition site, both of those were also tested at Redstone Arsenal, and I was there for that. I was at Redstone when I worked on the Avenger missile launcher to develop a new camera system for the Avenger, a new thermal for the Avenger, and a new display system for the Avenger, working with Boeing. And then I also did some hybrid power at Redstone Arsenal. So a lot of different programs I have been involved in over the last 30 years. So Greg and I are, we're not prepper guys on YouTube. We are people who have actually done this for a living. We have decades of doing this. I've been doing it for, God, almost coming up on 40 years. Greg's been doing it for more than that. So between the two of us, we're, getting close to having, 80, 90, 100 years of experience between the two of us in working with military technologies, lasers, night vision, power systems, rocket engines, you name it. When it comes to the nuts and bolts and guts of it, between the two of us, we could be pretty dangerous if we ever put our heads together. I figure if we had a well-stocked garage, Greg and I could take on most small third world countries. So, there's an advantage to talking and listening to people who have experience, especially a lot of experience, because we give you that experience and we give you the truth. And people watch us because they know who we are and they know what we've done. In a lot of cases, in my career, my reputation preceded me. Same applies for Green Greg's. So, Greg, as always, it has been a pleasure having you here tonight, sir. I greatly appreciate that. And we will see you the next time.
All right, Lee, I appreciate your end. And like you said, hey, Lee, when I was in middle school, I was a subscriber to the Civil War Book Club. And when I was like in 8th or 9th grade, I was ordering books from the patent papers and the books on military strategy. And while everybody else was studying TV and sports, I was trying to figure out what's going on in the world and what to do about it and how these things work. So I have had a lifelong interest in history, military events, and military strategy. This goes way back with me. The oldest video of me on YouTube that I know of, the oldest video I can find anywhere, is me doing the opening speech to the 1993 International Space Development Conference, which I chaired in Huntsville, Alabama. And in that speech, I'm talking about the 1,000-mile war with in Alaska between the Japanese and Americans, and how we fought wars while rural-ass America, where we still had dirt roads all in the middle of the country, fought both sides of the world and won. How we have the determination, the kind of can-do spirit, what we could do. That's still, we could do far more today if we just pull our heads out of our rear end, Lee.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We could
Absolutely.
I was much further along. We could do so much, but we've been convinced that we can't tie our shoes. And we got to snap out of this stupor we've been lulled into. We can do great things, Lee, but we got to snap out of this stupor and do it. So that's what I'm all about.
Well, we have to change our leadership is what's got to be done.
All righty. We got to educate our kids. No more participation awards. They got to accomplish things, do things.
Yep.
Thank you.
Roger that.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you again. And with that, I'm going to say